Hey guys, how's everybody doing? I hope that you're surviving this interesting time of social distancing and online learning. It's probably a brand new thing, and I'm sure it's not is necessarily the most fun way to try to get learning done, but we're going to do the best we can. Okay, we're going to talk this week about sales. Sales is the thing that keeps businesses going. I don't care whether you're in media or anything else, If you have a product and people aren't buying it, you're out of business. In broadcasting, it's even more important because people have to actually go out and make sales. It's not something that just happens offhand. You have to actually physically send people out there to different businesses and corporations, etc., to have to do sales. So we're going to talk about a couple of little things that salespeople tend to try to do in order to make sales possible. So give me a moment while I try to change my screen. Whenever you get a chance, there is a website called stationratings.com. You can see uh, there is the address. I want you all to get yourself a subscription to that. It's free. You can register for it and just register as a student, name it, or you can say yourself as a teacher. When it says what business you're with, you just say your education, Eastern Kentucky University, and it gives you a free account. And you can look up radio station ratings from just about any region across the country. You know, all stations, be TV or radio, go through ratings. Radio does it through what used to be um, Arbitron. Remember when we did the exercise on station ratings? Arbitron used to be the one that did radio. They were taken over by Nielsen. So now Nielsen does both radio and TV as compared to television, where people have boxes on their TVs to monitor what they're watching. And even that's going to be changing a little bit. They're trying to work on a new system because more and more people are streaming TV shows on their computers and on their smartphones. And they've really worked out a great system to be able to monitor how well those shows do streaming wise, but they're still evaluating that. With radio, in the past, it used to be they used to have the used to mail out in different markets these personal journals, and people would actually have to fill out with a pen and paper, what station they listened to for any number of time, write down the call letters, the time of day they listened to it. Now they have what they call personal people monitors, which sends an electronic signal to monitor when you're listening to a particular radio station. Your bigger markets have it. Your small ones, your more rural ones, tend to still use the handheld diary, and then take an aggregate of the number of what of the people that they're sending it out to, the aggregate number of what they write down as far as stations listen to. And that's how they come up with their ratings. Used to be also too when they sent out those old journals, they'd send you like $2 or $3, maybe $5 as an encouragement to have you fill it out. So it was, little pocket change. But radio stations can live and die by ratings. And it also helps them when they are now trying to get people to buy. Because depending on how you play with those numbers, you can make yourself look really good, even if your numbers don't necessarily show how strong you may be. So let's take, for example, Kentucky. Click on Kentucky. There are 3 markets in Kentucky. Radio as compared to TV has a lot more markets. Louisville is the biggest market in the state of Kentucky. It's 54th in the nation. Lexington, Fayette, which is around where we are, we're 103. And then the Huntington, West Virginia, Ashford, Kentucky market is considered 170. You can probably guess, and let me click backwards, the largest market is right up here in New York. New York City is the #1 market. And, obviously it's because of population density. Los Angeles, I believe, is #2. Chicago, I believe, is #3. I think Philadelphia might be 4 or 5. But anyway, let me back up. So if you were to click on, let's say, the Lexington Fayette market here in my account, It gives you a breakdown on, right now, what are the top stations. Lexington, because it's a smaller market, is only surveyed twice a year, the fall and the spring. Markets like New York, which are much bigger, will, let me back up to New York and give you another example. New York City, um, they are swept 13 times a year. So almost just about every month you're getting updates as far as how they're doing numbers wise. And it gives you a little breakdown here. Population about 16 million. Gives you a breakdown. About a little over 16% of the population is black. About 25% of the population is Hispanic. That means that the rest of the population is white in the New York metro area that they survey. Oh, by the way, if you hear some barking or noise, I'm out here on my patio and my dogs are with me. That's Pappy. And over here, because Herbie mentioned his name, that's Roxy. So if they start barking, you know who they were or what that noise was. Here's a bigger screen. Here's Roxy. And over there is Pappy. I didn't mean for you guys to come over. Oh, I never should have mentioned your name because now you're going to be bothering me. Okay, go lay down, guys. I got to finish this class. Thank you. Go lay down. Okay, let's get back to Lexington for a second here. Look at these numbers again. So, one interesting thing about radio is that back in the 90s, when they deregulated ownership, you started seeing a lot of radio stations being taken over by big corporations. Consider like the Walmarting of radio. Stations that used to be owned by individuals, mom and pop stations, they disappeared and were being bought up by big conglomerates. So if you look here, just in the Lexington market, let me see if I can get this to move up or down a little bit. If not, let me see if I can shrink the screen just a little bit here. If you look at a breakdown, if you look at the top 3 or 4 stations in the Lexington market, they're all owned by one corporation, iHeartMedia, which used to be called Clear Channel. They have WBUL The Bull, they have WXML FM, they WKLT, and WLAP, which is actually an AM radio station. I know AM may be foreign to a lot of you guys, but yes, there are still people who listen to AM radio. Their last market survey, they're probably in the middle one right now because spring is rolling in, but their last market survey in the fall of 19 gives you an idea of what how well they're doing, even though they're seeing a little bit of a drop from the spring. WBUL is still number 1. WMXL, as you can see, has had a big jump. They were down at 2.9. Remember, we went over those formats. Their format is Hot AC, and they went from a 2.9 share up to a 7.2 share. Again, it gives you the breakdown of the composition. Population in this area is about 526,000, about 10% black, about 5% Hispanic, and again, the market is swept twice a year. WXLT, which is a contemporary hit radio station. They've been pretty much steady the whole time, 5.95, 5.25, had a little bit of a bump. Last fall went up to 6. If you were to go into the blue areas on here and click on it, it'll give you a quick breakdown on the station. Who they are, what they do, etc. Right now, everybody's dealing with the issues of coronavirus, but you can get some information about that station. Obviously, WBUL is a country station, so a lot of stuff they're going to talk about had to deal with country music. WLXK, which probably meant Lexington, Kentucky. Again, you notice how it's similar because at the opening part, it's because it's owned by iHeart. They tend to stretch things across all their platforms specifically. So whether you were going to go to iHeart station in Lexington or Louisville or New Jersey or California, you would probably see this right at the top, the iHeart Living Room Concert for America. And then they do some specific things focusing in on the particular format that they have, because obviously their format is contemporary hit radio. So they're going to talk about a lot of contemporary hit stars or music or things that fit with that thing. So you'll see probably commercials talking about things that or promo ads that will fit what they believe that demographic audience looks for. And that's what sales is you try to match up businesses with an audience of like-minded people. And remember how I told you, Roxy would probably hear something start barking? Well, she hears one of her neighbor dogs barking, so. Roxy, Roxy, Roxy. All right. Anyway. So, stationratings.com, again, radio stations live and breathe not just by the ratings, but by how they can use those ratings to be able to make sales. Just because you may have the number one station in the market doesn't necessarily mean that every client is going to be a good fit for you. And knowing how to fit those clients and make sure they reach that target audience will help you be a better salesperson. If you are interested in management eventually, or you really want to make good money, if you are a good people person, sales is the place to go. Because if you're a good salesperson, you can be making very good money. One of the speakers I plan on having, and I'm going to see if I can get her in for, just like a quick Skype interview so she can talk about what she does. Her name is Alex Brown. She graduated from EKU back in 2014. She works for Cumulus Media. And if you look right here, Cumulus has several stations here in Lexington also. And I think they're the number 2 radio corporation in the United States behind iHeart. In her 5 years there now, I guess she started there in the fall of 2014. In 5 years, 6 years she's been there. She is now the number 1 salesperson in this market for her station. And she's pulling in a very nice 6-figure salary. So she is doing very well for herself. But she's a talker, and she's the kind of person who's very good with people. So if you're good and you're a hustler, you can make some very good money in sales. I'm not trying to push you or short anything, but just letting you know. And also, too, if you want to go into management, 99% of your managers at radio and TV stations, your general managers, are from the sales department because they want people who understand the bottom line, and the bottom line is money. They don't tend to come from news. They don't tend to come from production or promotion. They tend to come from sales. All right. I want to focus in on the state of Ohio because that's how I'm going to work my presentation here. Okay. Obviously, before coming to Lexington, I spent, about a quarter century in the state of Ohio as a journalist and also as a radio station manager for a couple of public radio stations in Columbus, the one owned by Ohio State and the one owned by Columbus Public Schools. During my time as general manager at WCBE, I also had to dabble in sales. Now, I admit that while I'm a great talker, sales is not necessarily my strength. But there were some techniques and things that I learned in order to make sure I could be as successful as I was in trying to promote the station. So let's look at the Columbus market for a second here. Again, kind of similar to what you saw in Lexington, Columbus is also dominated by iHeartMedia. Now, when Nielsen took over the ratings from Arbitron, many stations could not necessarily afford the increase in rates. These ratings are not free. You have to pay for them. Now, while you see, I don't know how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's more than 16 stations in the Columbus market, but these are the 16 that subscribe to Nielsen to get their ratings. If you go down here, you can look down here and look at all these other stations that are in the market that happen to get mentioned in the personal people monitoring device, but because they don't subscribe to Nielsen, or maybe they do, but they're not in a Nielsen range. For example, a perfect example is this one, WLW, because it's a strong AM signal, especially in the evening at night when they're full clear channel. They come in really strongly in Lexington, but I'm not in Lexington. Well, you can actually hear them down here in Lexington too, but they come in real strong up in Columbus. But because they're not registered in the Columbus market, their ratings will not show up in the Columbus market. Even people will pick up on them. But you got other stations here like WRFD, which was a Christian radio station. You got a country music station here. This one's probably registered in Dayton, which is kind of like with Cincinnati. It's about 50 miles west of Columbus. So you're going to have stations that either don't pay for Nielsen ratings, or because the signal is strong enough, they get picked up in Columbus, but they're not going to be rated for Columbus. So just wanted to show you that. So let's look at these stations here. One of the stations, last station I worked for, WCB, is a public radio station. And I am not sure, because these last couple of years, I have not even seen them even being listed at all for Nielsen. In the past, it used to be when it was owned by Arbitron, public radio had an agreement with them where they could get a reduced rate on being able to see the Arbitron numbers. The only deal was, the agreement was that public radio stations could not use those numbers when making sales to compete against the commercial stations, which were paying a lot more money. It would just allow public stations to see how well they were doing in the market. That has changed since it was taken over by Nielsen, and now I don't know. I don't know if public broadcasters get a break in ratings or not. And looking down here again, I still don't see. What I find interesting is, and I'm not sure why this is done, WSNY, Sunny 95 in Columbus, used to be a top 3 station in the market. It's owned by Sega Communications, so I am not sure why they are not showing up with their ratings, unless for some reason they decide to drop. But as I said, you're only talking about 16 stations showing up here now, as compared to the past we had a lot more. And it could be because you're looking at when they sweep Columbus, they do Columbus 13 times a year. It could be that they with Nielsen now, they will allow some stations in bigger markets to not necessarily do every ratings period. Maybe they just want to do it maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So maybe they'll just do fall and spring, or maybe they'll do 3 times. Maybe they'll do fall, winter, spring, summer, rather than doing it monthly. So it really depends. But let's look at this right here. So again, in the market, the top 4 stations you see right there are owned by iHeart. WCOL, country music. WTVN, which is an AM station, which is news talk. WNCI, when I lived there, was always in the top 3 or 4, contemporary hit radio. And WODC, adult hits radio. Followed by WBNS Sports, which kind of makes sense only because WBNS is the flagship station for, yes, The Ohio State University. You will see those numbers actually go up even higher during the football season. WOSU, which is the public radio station owned by Ohio State University, is, at least in this one, in the top 10. Probably if you look at when they do the fall or the spring or the summer sweeps, you might see the numbers go a little bit lower, as more stations will probably do those seasonal sweeps rather than the monthly breakdowns. But let's talk about this for a while. Oh, one of the last thing too, which is always interesting, Not enough stations promote this, but you notice right here where it says WSU HD2. When the federal government mandated all broadcasters to go to high definition, and when radio went to high definition, they allowed them to have separate bands. So you can have a WSU1, WSU2, WSU3. For whatever reason, it was not pushed enough by radio to get those split streams. Uh, your radios, your streaming devices can actually, be able to pick up HD radios on their different streams, but not enough people do it. They pretty much just stick with the main bands on their radios, either in their cars or their personal listening devices. So when I was, again, working at WCBE as the general manager, I had to also do some sales too. We had to learn how to compete with these other radio stations, both the other public radio station, my old employees, WOSU, as well as the commercial radio stations. So the challenge was always trying to explain to customers not to get dazzled by numbers. Right now, if you look at it, WCOL, they're the number one station back in February with a 10.2 share. But look at their CUME. Their CUME is 387,000. Now jump down to WNCI, which is a contemporary hit radio station, all the pop music. They're about 7.3, but look at their CUME. Their CUME is 457,000. So they're almost 70, 80,000 more than WCOL, the number one station. Again, depending on what kind of salesperson you are, you're going to look at the number and figure out how is that number going to benefit me? Do I use the CUME number or do I use the share number? If you're talking about WNCI, you might want to use the CUME if you're trying to beat out WCOL. However, since it's all owned by the same company, if you're a salesperson with them, you're going to use all those numbers talking about how many people you're reaching. Because when you combine all three numbers, you're reaching, a CUME of almost 1 million people just in the Columbus market. So you've got it pretty well made. But if you were competing radio stations, as these used to be years ago, if you're a salesperson, what number are you going to use to make yourself look good? And do these raw numbers really tell the story? And this is again where good salespeople learn how to not just worry about the raw numbers. All right, as I said, I had to work on doing sales at times. So when you are going out as a salesperson, you've got to assume, even if you're the big dog in the fight, WBOL, you always try to assume that the person that you're pitching to knows nothing about you and knows even less about radio or your radio station. So when I was doing sales in Columbus at that time, in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, it was a boom era as far as people moving in. Houses in and around Columbus were exploding as far as growth was concerned. There was so much building, farmland was being taken over, and houses were going up left and right. One of the big home builders at that time was Dominion Homes. So I needed to go out and be able to figure out how I could get a contract with Dominion Homes. So I put together this package to be able to give to them and leave behind for the clients to potentially read. And let's just go through this. So information on for Dominion Homes on WCBA FM, NPR's Central Ohio's NPR station. And I just gave them a quick overview. Again, assuming that they know nothing about who and what WCBE is. WCBE provides highest quality local, national, international programming featuring news, music, and information to its listeners in Columbus and the Central Ohio area. WCBE broadcasts at 90.5 FM with 12,000 watts of power from a transmitter atop the Levesque Tower at Broad and High Streets in Columbus, Ohio. The station also has a repeater signal at 106.7 WCLT radio facilities in Newark, Ohio. And it can be heard on the web at WCBE.org. We mix radio news and cultural mainstays with a truly eclectic blend of local, world music, a commitment to local news coverage, an effort to serve our audiences in both traditional and non-traditional ways. That's my elevator speech. That's my opening lines, just getting my foot in the door. So now, again, trying to explain to the client who we are, I give them some more details. Because again, they cannot go to, at that time, you couldn't go to stationratings.com and pull up WCBE because we were not listed there because public radio was not part of Arbitron. So WCBE is the most listened to public radio station in the country. More people listen to WCBE all the time. In fact, of the more than 1,100 public radio stations across the country, WCBE's audience share ranks as the 48th most listened to station nationally. They listen for the music, the news reports, and community affairs information. Our listeners appreciate the informative, non-commercial, direct approach our sponsors use to advertise their business and services. Your company's performance deserves a promotional vehicle of the same caliber. Now you can reach those people who make the decisions that influence your business. Again, just throwing a pitch out there. Give them some demographic information. All right. The average number of weekly listeners to WCBE in 2003 was between 98,000 and 106,000. Now, let's go back quickly and remember, look at these numbers here. WCLO, triple our numbers. WTBN AM Even Talk was still at almost 80,000 more listeners than we did. And the station across town at that time, while its number is now 140,000, WOSU, when I was still there, their format was classical music. And that classical music audience was disappearing, because it tended to be older, whether they passed on, or a lot of them may have retired and moved out of the area. So we had a larger number of listeners at that time than they did, and they switched their format to news talk maybe about 10 years ago now, sometime after I left. But anyway, so you got to give them some demographic information. For example, here's our breakdown. 18 to 24-year-olds, about 10%. 25 to 34-year-olds, about 21%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What I wanted to show them and have them pay particular attention to is like the prime demographic of 25 to 54. People in their peak earning years. So we were talking about, 75% or more of our listeners, or around 75% of our listeners, were in their prime years. Or what's my math say? 20, 40, 60. All right, almost 70%, about 67% of our listeners were in their prime years between 25 and 54. If you add 55 to 64, then you're getting a little bit over 70%, almost 80%. What are the breakdowns? Well, about a quarter or a third of our listeners are professional specialties. About a third of our listeners were executive, administrative, managerial. About 20% is administrative support, and about 10% is staff or sales. Then look at the breakdown in income. More than, let's see, that's 50, and 2 is 70, 14. So you're talking about almost 80% of our listeners earn between 35 and 75,000. Well, let's even break down even more. 60% of our listeners earn $50,000 or more, which is not a bad salary. That's what I was trying to always point to them. It's like, look at the household incomes. And then we have a very educated audience, as 78%, almost 80% of our listeners were college educated. So again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to educate the particular client as to what your station has to offer by who's listening. All stations, and let me rephrase that, maybe not all, just about every station, especially if they're part of a conglomerate, subscribes to what they call a marketing service. The marketing service, what it does is it surveys particular markets, you know, a couple of times a year to give you a demographic breakdown on people's attitudes, lifestyles, and things like that. Back at WCBE, we belong to this marketing service called the Media Audit. The Media Audit would twice a year survey the Columbus metropolitan area to find out people's likes. The surveys get down to real specific things. What kind of coffee do you drink? How many times do you go to Starbucks a week or a month? What kind of cars do you drive? How many children do you have? You know, are you a Buckeye fan? Or if you maybe if you're Lexington, are you a Cats fan or are you a Cardinals fan? So the survey gets down real specific. It's got so many different questions. So in trying to appeal to Dominion Homes, I had to show them why, even though my numbers may not be as big as WNCI's, which is, had 300,000 or 400,000 listeners, or WCLL's that had maybe 300,000 listeners, why my 98 to 106,000 listeners would be a good buy for them. So it allows you, with the software that the marketing firm has, allows you to put together different information and demographics for your particular client trying to pitch to. So what they have is what they call a ranker report. And the ranker report is breaking down some of those statistics that they pull together. So the market talks about Columbus. This survey was between May and June of 2003. It's only going to deal with adults 18 and older, so we're not worried about kids. And it's going to give you the most often. So the target audience I used for this particular search was people who moved in the past year to a house. Of the 1.2 million people who live in the Columbus metropolitan area at that time, about 102,000 were in that demographic market, or about 8%. Of that market that moved to a house the past year, WCBE had the largest share of that audience, more than the Blitz, which is not on here right now, nor WBNS, WNCI, WCL, all those stations that I showed you before that were number one, didn't necessarily mean that they had the audience that this particular client was looking for. Next slide. Here's another one. Plan to buy a home in the next 2 years. Demographics is pretty much the same. It's still got the audience of 1.2 million, or population 1.2 million in Columbus. But according to the survey, about 200,000 of these people were interested in buying a home in the next 2 years. Now remember, this is Dominion Homes. They're one of the big home builders. They're building homes all over the Central Ohio area. So again, of that population, who tended to reach them the most, what station they tend to listen to the most? Again, it was WCBE. WCBE did a great job at people who are looking to buy a home in the next couple of years. Let's choose another slide. Plan to buy a home in the next 2 years, but now rent. Right now, about 100,000 people, they say, in this area. The target audience is about that much. Now, here's what I tried to make sure I was being humble, because sometimes people can smell if you're trying to snow job them. So you want to give them information that shows that, yeah, you know what? We may not be number one, but we're still good. So at that time, WWCD, which was an alternative music station at that time, alternative rock, I'm not sure what their format is now, they did a better job at reaching that demographic. It might be because also, too, being a city or an area with a lot of universities. Of course, we had the Ohio State University, There was a number of community colleges. You had Denison University. You had um, Otterbein University, and a couple of other schools that were right within a 30-mile radius of Columbus. So you probably had a number of young people, especially with Ohio State University, had a number of young people who were renting because they're living off campus, or maybe they were in graduate school with family, things like that. And so you could probably understand why they might be attracted to an alternative music station. But that being the case, you still see that we did a great job at reaching these people who were renting. Another slide again. Plan to buy a home next 2 years with an income of 50,000 or more. Target audience about 8%, about 78,000, and we hit that demographic better than anyone. Another fact, okay. Plan to buy a home in the next 2 years, now own a home. So, all right, you got your first home. It was great for you and your spouse, but now all of a sudden the kids are coming along. Maybe you need a bigger home. All right. Again, number, about 100,000, and WCBE, again, according to the market survey, did the best job at reaching that particular demographic. It's again trying to show people why this station, even though we only got 100,000 listeners, is going to do a better job at getting those people who you are trying to get to buy your product. It's going to be a better bang for your buck than necessarily buying a station that's got 500,000 listeners. Liquid assets, cash, stocks, etc., 100,000 plus. Who was number one? Well, it wasn't us. But that's okay, because we would still want to show that we do a great job at reaching out to it. WSNY, which was not on the market survey when we looked at Columbus before, but I mentioned that it's probably because SNY is probably just going to do theirs quarterly, spring, summer, fall, and winter, as compared to monthly. But SNY's format is adult contemporary, so they tend to have a very large listening audience that is heavily skewed towards women, because statistics, at least for a while, used to show that women tend to be more attracted to adult contemporary than men. Men, if you look at the numbers for classic rock and rock stations, tend to have higher number demographics male wise than they do female wise. Traded stocks, bonds, securities past year. You talk about 80% of the population, about 200,000. WCBE, again, number one there. Then again, I go into some basic information about what underwriting means. Now, public radio can't do commercials like commercial radio does. We have what they call underwriting credits, which means that we can give information about your business, address, stuff like that, but we can't do what they call to action, like, hurry, 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 come down. No, we can't do that stuff like that. No slogans, no jingles, things like that. But we can say something straightforward that fits their business. So it's like, support for this program comes from Eastern Kentucky University, offering 15 different majors for you to choose from. More information is available at blah, 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 blah. Or you can mention this, Eastern Kentucky University is, which will be holding an open house for prospective students on this date. For more information, go to this website or call that. So, there are certain things that you can't do in public radio that you can't say in public radio that you can get away with in commercial radio. But that's why rates tend to be a little bit more favorable. Oh, and by the way, these slides, I will make sure that there'll be an attachment to the notification of this, so you'll be able to see these slides and be able to view them on your own. I'm not going to worry about co-opting right now. Here's some basic rates. Obviously, when you're talking about radio in general, morning and afternoon drive time tend to be your most listened to and your highest rates. And morning and afternoon drive is a term that comes from way back when. And basically, it just meant that they call it drive time because that's when people tended to be in their cars driving to and from work. So you tend to try to catch your largest number of people listening to radio at that time in drive time. So that's where that term came from. Morning Edition, which was our morning news program, was $90. All Things Considered was an afternoon news program. There's Morning Edition there, and then All Things Considered there was $90. Normally, um, rates wise, you don't tend to have your higher rates in the evenings or overnights, and you don't tend to have your higher rates on the weekends unless you have something as a specialty going on. If you're the station that carries UK football or basketball games, you would tend to have a spike in your ratings then. Say like you're in the Louisville area doing Louisville, or up in Columbus with Ohio State football, you tend to have spikes in your ratings then. That's probably the only time you would normally see ratings be higher on a Saturday or a Sunday. However, in public radio at the time, the highest rated program used to have was this one called, two programs were really highly rated. And they only came on once a week, and they both were on Saturdays. Car Talk and What Do You Know? And if you look here at the ratings for Car Talk and What Do You Know, they were both $100. Weekend Edition Saturday, yeah, it was a little bit of a push trying to get them to buy that. Same thing with Prayer Room Companion, but because these were specialty shows that were very highly rated by its listeners, people tended to spend just a little bit more for them. But normally you do not see your higher rates on weekends and especially overnights. Most times you'll see salespeople throw in extra spots during the overnight hours as an enticement for people to buy. So it's like, you know what? You buy your 15 regular spots with us during the daytime, I'll throw in another 6 or 7 overnight. Because overnight tends to have plenty of time because you tend not to get a lot of people who are listening. Um, you'll hear a lot of 24-hour restaurants who do a lot of overnight spots trying to catch like truckers and things like that, saying, oh, you know what? If you're on I-75 cruising past Richmond, stop here at, Joe's Drive-In, where you can get that great home cooked meal or something like that. Then there were different packages you may try to put together for people. Here's some packages I had, like the Lucky 13, you know, gives you 2 bonus spots in some of our premier programs for every 13 underwriting purchases that you make. Or the 10 spot, it gives you 2 bonus spots for every 10 underwriting mentions that you make. So you look for different ways to entice people to buy. Um, we had a literary package. These were all the shows that dealt with books and intelligent talk, etc. So anything like Fresh Air, Writer's Almanac, This American Life, select the shorts. You had the music package. We bought a lot of our music programs. The whole point is you looking, especially this was a generic package that I didn't necessarily expect. Dominion Homes to buy into any of these particular package information, but I wanted them to specifically know these things are available as another way for them to be able to say, okay, how am I going to, who do I want to target? How do I want to get people to buy with me? We had our own movie review program called It's Movie Time. So, if they want to be an exclusive sponsor for that, I wanted them to do that. And here's a sample of what a script would sound like on public radio. I'll read the short version. Program X receives support from Dominion Homes with features like 9-foot ceilings, computer lofts, and breakfast nooks. Dominion Homes has floor plans for many tastes. Details and models and locations are available by calling Dominion Homes at this phone number. We're still talking some of the early days, so it wasn't always as easy to find stuff online. People weren't as much online as they were, so that's why you necessarily didn't see the mention of websites in every one of the underwriting pitches that I gave. But it's like if you look at the first one, you're hearing Program X in Central Ohio Thanks to support from Dominion Homes. Dominion Homes created over 45 floor plans to suit many tastes, from classic traditional to open contemporary homes. Every Dominion home features brand name products from Anderson Bay windows and the breakfast nooks to Kohler faucets in the master suite. Dominion homes are available throughout Central Ohio. Locations and information are online at www.dominionhomes.com. So again, just let them know what the spot would sound like. Here's another one that I pitched to. Oh yes, I eventually did get Dominion Homes to buy into us. It was a nice little buy. This one was pitched towards the wine vault. Now you notice the opening is the same. It's the same information that I gave to Dominion Homes. You know, who we are, what we're about, who's our demographic. And now again, using the media audit, I was able to pull up some information that I thought would entice them to maybe want to consider buying with us. You know, I probably should have made this a little bit bigger. But okay, that's a little easier for you guys to see. Again, these slides and everything will be on Blackboard for you to be able to look at and review. Again, the rank report, drank wine 3 days in the past 2 weeks. It's about 6% of the audience was doing that, or 6% of the population, I should say, is doing that. So target was about 83,000. Who do we have? WCBU was the #1 station that those people were drinking from, or I should say listening to as they drink their wine. All right, past 2 weeks drank beer on 6+ days. Again, not trying to snow them, but still trying to let them know that, you know, we could still be a population that they want to look at, because the wine vault carried a wide selection of beers too, as well as craft beers. Now, again, WBNS was the #1 station. But WBNS, remember, is the all sports station. I'm not trying to stereotype, but sometimes you have to play to a little bit of those stereotypes when you're looking at a particular target audience. You know, if you were doing sales for WBUL, which is a country music station, you probably would not go to your local black hair care product company and ask who they want to buy. Not that black folks don't listen to country music, but it's probably not your primary target audience. You're going to look for something that's going to be an affinity. So car dealerships, especially people that are selling trucks, country western bars. You guys sometimes think stereotypically when you're trying to do sales. So we were #3 at that time, behind WBNS. I believe LVQ was a rock station, and then came us, WCBE. Now, again, because I knew that they sold different type of group, artisan and craft beers, that was my big pitch going to them. We had this particular show that I didn't go through the whole thing of giving them all these different packages. I was specifically targeting them because I wanted them to be a sponsor for a particular show, one of the key sponsors. So I was pitching them this one show called The Splendid Table. The Splendid Table is a weekly exploration of food and cooking, covering the entire subject of food as it touches our lives and feeds our souls. More than a cooking program, The Splendid Table is about meal as a gathering place, classic dishes, new discoveries, travel, and other cultures, feeding family on the run, and lots more. So not only did I have these, wine bottles, different wines from around the country and around the world, craft beer and artisan beers, locally made, nationally made, internationally made. So it's like I was trying to get them, here's a show that talks about, the foodie culture, the culture of eating, from, whether it be the Thanksgiving around your house or taste from around the world. This series uses discussion of food to both hot and humble as a port of entry into the celebration of the American culinary traditions and more, culminating with a listener call-in, call-back segment. As a local underwriter, you'll find The Splendid Table provides you with several excellent opportunities to advance your business and promote the image. 2/3 of Splendid Table listeners are between the ages of 25 and 64. By supporting WCB and Split Table, you gain a tremendous visibility before a select radio audience of affluent, educated listeners predisposed by their lifestyle to tune into the Splendid Table. Then I just gave them some basic information again about what public radio is and what it does. It's like 66% are more likely to cook for fun than the average adult. Again, they tend to bake more than the average adult, tend in the garden more than the average adult. So again, trying to show this particular lifestyle that the wine vault would definitely want potentially coming into their business. So that was my big pitch for them, and they liked it and they bought it, and they became the exclusive sponsor for a while of the Splendid Table. So, what we're going to do, and I'm giving this now to give you time to think about it, is that you guys are going to put together a sales pitch. You're going to get your account with stationratings.com, and then click on Kentucky and click on the Lexington market. You're going to choose a radio station, or if you want, even though it's not listed there, you can probably find something, or a TV station if you want. And you're going to put together a sales pitch. You're going to choose a local business, restaurant, clothing shop, car repair place, or whatever. And you're going to make a pitch to them as to why they should buy on your station. This means you have to do a little bit of research on your own. Go back and look at that information I gave you on the different formats, and then you got to play around with it. Okay, we all know that CHR, contemporary hit radio, tends to skew towards a younger audience. So even though the top station may have 500,000 listeners, if a good number of them are teenagers, kids without a lot of buying power, is that going to be a good sales pitch for you? Unless you're talking about maybe a clothing store that skews towards a young audience, or maybe if you're talking about maybe college-age kids, so maybe you're looking at a restaurant or a bar in Lexington or in Richmond that you're going to promote towards EKU or UK or transit students or whatever. If you want to use a radio station or a business from your own area or your hometown, that's fine too. But you're going to put together a marketing pitch. And then near the end of the semester, when we all get together online, because that'll be one of our online sessions, we'll actually be in class together at the same time, you each are going to pitch or make your pitch to me. I'm going to be the client. You're going to make your pitch to me as to why I need to buy in your station. You give me some demographic breakdown as far as, who tends to listen to your station, what the format is, a little background on the station, and background on the business that you're trying to pitch to. You want to show me that you've done a little bit of your homework and you know something about me. If I'm the owner of Joe's Bar and Grill, you want to say why you think Joe's Bar and Grill is important for you or to be on this radio station or this TV station. Joe's Bar and Grill has been in existence since 1947. It's been family owned. It's been a place that people have come to for years to enjoy basketball and football games. People have had reunions there. You want to show the client that you know something about them. You're not just walking in the door cold, even though professionals will tell you that most of the clients that they get are from cold calls. For this particular exercise, you're going to have done some of your own research and study about them to be able to come in and pitch to me why you think buying with your station is going to help my business. Let me pull up. I should have done this before. Hold on. So, here's your assignment. Your assignment is to write a presentation and turn it in a sales presentation. You're going to choose a radio TV station to represent. Use real local stations. So again, if you're from Louisville, you want to use a Louisville station, that's fine. If you're from Ohio, you want to use a station in Cincinnati or Columbus or Cleveland or whatever, it's up to you. you're going to decide the following. You're going to select a local client. So if you're choosing, a client from Columbus, make sure it's a real client, and what you have to know about them. Research the client and pitch specifically to that business. Use the internet to help you with research. You can sometimes find information about the clients by going to their website, as well as clicking on the information about the radio station to give you some basic ideas about who the radio station is. You probably have your own favorite radio stations anyway, so just choose one that you kind of like. Devise a rate card. You saw me with make this a little smaller. So it's not letting me go up and down. Oh wait, now it's letting me go up and down. Okay, let me zoom in on it again. Let's see if I make this go down. There we go. Devise rate card. This is where you're going to have to sometimes do a little creative thinking. Some radio stations go to their website, they might be able to give you a rate card. A lot of times stations don't want to put that stuff out there because they don't want the competition to know what's going on, because they don't want to necessarily be undersold or whatever. But you might be able to find some information about that. You might even be bold enough to try to call a radio station, let them know you're working on this class project, and ask them, can you give me an idea what your general rates would be if you were selling? There are two websites I've given you here to help you. We talked about stationradios.com, but let me go to radiolocator.com, which is something you should also think about using in your presentation. Radiolocator.com. Now, radiolocator.com, it will give you some information that can help you as far as being able to influence your buyers. So you can type in either a city, if you want to look for a radio station of a specific city, or if you want to call that a radio station. So let's use WBUL up here in Lexington. So it gives you quickly, the name, the station is call letters and number. And if the station has a slogan, 98.1 The Bull, it lets you know, here's the website. If you want to click on that, it'll take you to the Bull. We've already been there before, so we know what that looks like. But what is also helpful too is that you can include in your presentation the coverage map. It lets you know that the Bull has 100,000 watts of radiated power, which is a pretty powerful radio station. And so when you look at the coverage map here, it lets you know that WBUL, their signal covers a good portion of the state. The red circle here in the middle is the main coverage area. Then you got the secondary and then the tertiary. So depending on the day, you can hear really well WBLO from Berea up to Williamstown. But, on other days, you get all the way up near Independence, Kentucky, close to Cincinnati. So this really is a good thing to be able to put in there, letting people know that, hey, you've got this company. Every now and then people from Bardstown may be driving through here. Would you like them to stop and, visit your business? That's why you need to advertise with us. So that's another website that you can use to help you in putting together your sales pitch. I'm also including, when you go on Blackboard, you not only see this information, the information on your sales pitch or what you need to do, as well as these slides. I've also included some past sales pitch that students have done, so you get an idea of how to put the whole thing together. These are 3 pretty good ones that you can build off trying to work on your project from. Trying to think, is anything else I should add to this? If there's any questions or anything like that, just, again, try to email me. I don't know if I've ever given you guys my cell phone number, but make sure you write this down. You can always text me or call if you got any questions. And that is 614-315-1101. 614-315-1101. don't be hesitant about trying to contact me as you're working through these different things. And next week, I'll have more information for you as we continue working on our social distance learning. All right, guys, be safe out there. Hope that you're not totally isolating yourself, that you're getting out and enjoying some of this bright sunshine. Now that I'm getting off this porch, I'm going to take my dogs to the dog park. And they don't know anything about social distancing, but if nothing else, it keeps me active because I get to do a lot of walking. All right, talk to you guys soon. Be safe out there. Peace.